All right, we will keep letting people in as they come, but we do have limited time with Carolyn, so we are going to go ahead and get started while we have her with us. And so a couple quick things before we get started. I know this is our first virtual meeting together, so if your name isn't your first and last name right now, go ahead and change that just so that it's easy for us to know who we're talking to. And then the other thing is this is, personal preference, but last year we always recommended people try to use the grid view so that you could see everybody. A couple of folks said that actually was distracting to them and they liked to just have the view of, being able to see one person at a time. So do what's best for you, but just know, we've all been on Zoom a lot. You can always change it to see everybody. We, like I said, are going to go ahead and get started with while we have Carolyn here. We're going to start the same way we always do. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. We always start with our vision to remind us what we're all doing here. So can somebody read our vision from the screen?
Sure, I'll read it. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
All right. Vision, when education advocates and aspiring school board members are empowered with the knowledge and network they need to drive systemic change, every child will have the opportunity to succeed in school and beyond, and the entire community will be positively impacted.
Thanks, Damian. All right, so that's big picture. What are we trying to do at School Board School? Why did we get together today? Is our objectives. So could somebody read our objectives for today, either from the screen or they're in page 19 in your journal, if you have that in front of you. So someone else unmute and go ahead and do that.
I can do that if you want.
Thanks, Alex.
Objectives. Classmates will learn about the superintendent's priorities for the school year, identify critical education issues within the community, and begin coalition building through introductions to school board members and senior staff members.
Great. All right. So that is what we're trying to do together this morning. So we have Carolyn here joining us today. I know you have the bios for our guests. But Nicole will chat that in case you didn't have a chance to read those. We will likely have Susan Bunty joining us as well, who's one of our assistant superintendents. And then Pam Bauer said she's going to try to jump on and join us as well, because Carolyn does have to head out. She was just telling us about her knee surgery and go see one of the people who will help with that. But we're going to go ahead and have you all introduce yourselves really quickly too, so that Carolyn knows who it is she is talking with. And so we'll just ask that when you introduce yourself, just say your name, the neighborhood you call home, so Carolyn can start to figure out where we all are. And then if you are currently working at a school or you have kids who are school age in the CPS area, tell us that school. So nothing more than that, so we can get through this pretty quickly, but we're just going to do name, neighborhood, school. And this is the order of the introduction. So Marche, can you start us off?
Absolutely. Good morning. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for being here, Ms. Jones. My name is Marche Gendrew, and the place I call home is College Hill.
Awesome. So go check out the chat and we'll just go in this order.
Good morning, everyone, and a special good morning to you, Ms. Jones. My name is Kendra Mapp, and I live in the area of West Price Hill, and I have two children in CPS. So I have a first grader and a ninth grader.
Jackie is not with us yet, so we'll go to Unique.
Oh.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Unique Avery. I currently live in College Hill as well, and I do not work within the schools, but I used to work for CPS as a community resource coordinator.
Great. Emmanuel.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Good morning, President Jones. I'm Emmanuel with the LaSalle High School. I call home Woodlawn, but by way of Avondale. And so I'm excited to be here. So.
Morning, Damian Hoskins. Live in Forest Park, and Elements Hip Hop Cultural Arts Center is the lead agency at CPA.
We have Crystal here. Oh, how about Brother Abdeen?
All right, Brother Abdeen here. Good morning, good people. And I am at the University of Cincinnati Office of Inclusive Excellence and Community Engagement. I have a few different elementary and high school students that I report to. Won't list them all here. Where I call home is Avondale, A1 since day one. Stay true to it. Shout out to Ozzy and E-Man.
Thanks, Brother Abdi and Brian.
Good morning, Brian McConnell. I call Springdale home, and I have two young children at Springdale Elementary.
Thank you. I don't see Ashley yet. How about Alex?
Sure. Hi, thank you for joining us, President Jones. I'm Alex. Unlike Brother Abdeen, I cannot say I'm a born and bred Cincinnati native. I moved from Michigan about 3 years ago. I live in North Avondale. I have two kids, but they're ninth and soon to be sixth grade, but not in CPS.
Thanks. Alex, how about Isabel?
Good morning. My name is Isabel Kalubi Harper. I call Bond Hill home. I am a 7th and 8th grade teacher at Roberts Academy in Price Hill, and my son will be starting preschool at North Avondale Montessori.
That's a big step, Isabel. All right, exciting. And Mary, round us out.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mrs. Jones. I am Mary Weinberg. I'm currently a teacher at Hyde Park Elementary School. My neighborhood that I'm going to represent is Mount Airy, and I have two children, one who will be starting 7th grade at Walnut Hills, and I have a first grader at Fairview German Language School. So thank you for being here today.
All right, thanks all. So that is everyone in our class. I'm glad Susan was able to join us. She emailed saying she was having technical issues getting in, but now we've got Susan too. So Susan is one of our assistant superintendents at CPS. So we're gonna go ahead and get started so we can use as much time as possible in conversation with Carolyn and Susan. First of all, big thank you to them. We are all busy getting ready for the beginning of the school year, but whew, these two, it is such a big lift for them. So we're grateful for their time. I'm going to kick us off with one of the questions that we saw on our Jamboard that we were keeping our questions on. Then we'll ask our classmates to jump in with their questions. We saw lots of great questions being added. We ask that when you ask a question, a couple of things. One, just be cognizant of floor time. So if you've already asked something, just kind of hold back, wait and see if any of your classmates have something to ask. And then the other thing is just keep your questions broad. So if something's just like about your school or your family, maybe hold that for another time. Let's think bigger picture about kind of the whole district right now as we have time with Carolyn and Susan. If you want to ask a question, we'll just ask that you type either next or question in the chat. So don't type your whole question in. We want you to get to speak your question, but that way we'll just know that you want to ask the next question. All right, so that is our plan for today. And I'm going to kick us off with one of the first questions that was on our Jamboard, and that was around how we set goals in the district. So one of the questions was, just to start us off, how do you prioritize goals for the year? And then what's your process for evaluating them? And I know that's different for the board than the administration, so let's hear from both of you.
Okay, well, I'll get started, and thank you for inviting me. I always love coming to participate with School Board School. And just real quick, you all need to know that you are part of something really great that's happening in our area. What class is this, remind me, 4? Is this class 4? And it really is becoming a legacy in this city. And I would hope that it would continue to be that. So first of all, I decided to go first because your strategic plan starts with a vision. It starts with a vision for what you want to see happen in your district. From that vision, you talk about the things that you want to accomplish, which end up leading to your mission. You know, and it includes a great deal of conversation, discovery, thinking through ideas, testing out theories, doing assessments, all kinds of things that get you to a point of even being able to sit down and saying, well, where are our priorities? So it is a pretty detailed process, but again, it first starts with a vision of what you want to see happen over a number of years. And what we've tried to do at CPS is think more short-term instead of long-term. There used to be a period of time when lots of entities like CPS would do 5 and 10-year strategic plans. But what we've tried to do is narrow that a little bit to more of a short-term, say 3-year plan that really puts emphasis on some great things. So that's where we are. And Elisa is right in that how we envision that is different than how we operationalize it. So that I'll leave to Susan to discuss a little bit.
So thank you, Mrs. Jones, and thank you to Elisa for the invitation. I echo the words of Mrs. Jones by saying this has just been such an honor to be able to participate for the last few years. And I hope that you all can hear me. I'm having significant challenges this morning with internet access. I'm not sure why. So we have can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So everyone's completely frozen on my screen. So we have the opportunity and just the tremendous privilege of being able to take the vision that the board creates for us and to be able to take that vision along with the goals that have been identified and then using baseline data in terms of where we are currently to begin to prioritize our large actions in terms of how to fulfill that vision that has been presented to us. So we spend a lot of time with our senior leadership team and really working through the strategy, and I don't want to get too into the weeds, but then the large components of prioritization are then given to our department leaders here at central office to really put strategy and actions around each of those priorities that have been determined based upon the data that we have examined. I hope that helps.
Yeah, and I'll ask another question that was on our Jamboard that I think is a follow-up to this one. And that's, okay, so that's how you guys set your priorities and your goals for the year. What do you see from each of your perspectives as the biggest obstacle in the district right now to kind of reaching those goals? And then what do you think is one thing the district does really, really well?
I'm not, okay, I'll just jump in. What was the first part of that question? I'm sorry. What was one of the biggest obstacles? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that goes unsaid in terms of the kinds of challenges that we've had this year. We were well on target to achieve the strategic plan focus moving into our 3rd year, and then pandemic hit and we had to shift gears. In shifting gears, we did not want to lose focus of our strategic plan, but we had to redirect a lot of our efforts just to survive the year. So when you talk about obstacles, our obstacles and our biggest challenges have really been staying on the path of a formalized strategic plan while we're trying to raise the level back up to where we're getting just real basic things like getting kids back in school full time. So it all works hand in hand in that the same things that were our biggest challenges end up being the things that we give the greatest attention to because we have to. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And Susan can add, Ms. Bunty can add to that as needed.
No, I agree. I think COVID certainly was an unexpected and surprising sort of just bomb that fell on all of us in terms of really putting just kind of a pause on many of our directions and in the way that we were progressing. And unfortunately, COVID remains with us. And so I think that just in terms of trying to put mitigation plans in place and the efforts that requires sometimes pulls our attention, not intentionally, but it pulls our attention away from some of those other really, really key initiatives. So I think that we've been in the seat now for a minute and led through a pandemic. I think we've all grown as a result of that. And I think now that we are living in this time, I heard an inspirational person the other day say, and I thought it just captured it really well, that We are no longer in this time where we think that this is going to end anytime soon.
Right.
Instead, we've developed strategies to be able to keep our work going while we're living within this time. So I think that that's the frame now in which we find ourselves. And it's okay, yes, COVID is here, COVID is with us, but we are going to continue all of this other incredibly important work.
Yeah, which is why, one quick follow-up statement, which is why you hear us reference the strategic plan as a new refreshed plan. Because the plan, it as a whole didn't change. We really just shifted directions and had to mitigate strategies differently and that kind of thing. So it's a new CPS refreshed plan.
I'll keep asking questions off the Jamboard unless one of you all texts, chats in next or question, okay? So I'm just gonna keep going until I see one of you chat that in. So I think as you're talking about health, right? That's what COVID is, about, is obviously the impact on achievement, but also people's health. There was a number of questions around the school-based health centers that were mentioned in the program this morning. And so one question kind of high level is, how impactful are those school-based health centers, and kind of how do you know what measures are available? And are there any measures, not just about people's physical health, but is there any correlation between that and student achievement?
I love that question. So one of the hats I wear is helping to support our student-based health center. So thank you for asking that. We collect a lot of data around our SBHCs, and particularly around vaccination rates and all of the pieces that we're measured on in terms of student health for the state. So we are measured on obesity data for students. We're measured on, as I mentioned before, vaccination, eye exams, hearing exams, all of those kinds of pieces. But I think more importantly, and I love the second part of that question, is what impact does all of that have? And we've talked a lot about what's our goal, what's the outcome of that goal, which we get by measuring that data. But finally, what is the impact of that? And I think we have many, many, many data points around students who've gone to our vision centers, either at AWL or at Euler, where they do really sophisticated vision screening. And many students who got glasses, who were non-readers, who are now reading because it was an vision issue that needed to be addressed. We have other cases across the district where students were in extreme pain because of dental challenges. They didn't necessarily share that with anyone. That pain was their reality, if you will. And so then during dental checks, it was discovered that they had abscessed teeth, and then those were able to be corrected. And then again, that impacted learning. I could continue to share those stories, but we recognize, and the silver lining, if there is one, of COVID is we knew it, I think, at a very intellectual level, if you will, but it has been reinforced by 10,000 times the importance of physical and mental health in our school communities. And I think the other part of that question, if I'm not mistaken, is I think it was physical health to overall student achievement, but we've also seen the same types of increases in academic achievement when we're able to get students mental health supports through our lead agencies who are embedded in our schools.
Thank you, Susan. I'll build right off of that too, to a question I think that is close to Ms. Jones's heart too, but I do want to say that is so important. When I was a teacher in Mississippi, at one point I had a student who was not reading, and I realized very early on that every time he was given something, he was putting it this close to his face. And so we had a traveling nurse who came once a month. We'd always be like, all right, kids, today's your day to get sick. Like, this was, the lack of services we had. And I brought him to the nurse, and sure enough, I mean, she was shocked that he could make it through a day with just awful vision that he had. And same thing, we got him glasses, and it was amazing to just see, how he could read and how he could engage in school so differently. So thank you, Susan, for that example. And you mentioned the mental health services. And so one of the questions on the Jamboard, we know that COVID isn't just affecting people's physical health, but their mental health as well. We see that in our students. And so there was a question on here about what mental health support's in place for students and also for teachers. And I know, Susan, you probably have an answer to that. And Carolyn, our class may not know that that's what you spent your career doing. And so
Yeah.
Hi, Alyssa. Alyssa, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Pam. Thanks so much for joining us. We had just put another question out to our group. So Carolyn and Susan are about to answer a question around mental health services for our kids. But welcome, Pam. Everyone, this is Pam Bowers, one of our school board members as well.
And I will turn my camera on. I'm walking through the school as I speak, a school. Oh. I'm just moving all around today, Alyssa.
Thank you.
So,
Carolyn, did you want to start? Yes.
No, you go ahead. I'll follow up with you.
Okay, so we are incredibly blessed, and it was one of the quiz questions actually in the preceding presentation about talking about the tiered support systems that we have for social emotional learning. So our students are engaged this year in actually learning about social emotional learning and self-regulation and all those types of things in Tier 1. What we're most excited though, I think, is the addition of school social workers. Our board has made a very significant push and just has really supported the addition of being able to have social workers in every single one of our schools to be able to help with small group supports and to be able to really help identify those youngsters who may need one-to-one support. Previously, our school social workers were primarily used for attendance and truancy, and it isn't, they still will be in a way, but their footprint in that arena will be definitely decreased as they provide more emotional and mental health support to our students. And then finally, as many of you are probably aware, we are really blessed to have a partnership with MindPeace and the lead agencies across our district to provide that one-to-one support for our students and their families for those kiddos who may be having more significant challenges and who may need either short-term or long-term support. The other piece that we recognize is that our school teams sometimes have secondary trauma related to situations that they're supporting in the classroom or that they may have personally experienced during the pandemic or not even perhaps related to the pandemic. So again, with our support of the board, we're using some of our ESSER funds, which guidelines allow us to do to be able to support the mental health of our staff. We've increased the amount of groups that we will be offering to our teachers this fall, and we started doing that during the pandemic, actually having support groups for our school teams at different points throughout the non-work hours, early in the morning or in the evenings to help support them. And then we're also, through this relationship with TriHealth, are being able and very fortunate to be able to add classes around meditation and yoga and self-care types of offerings for our school teams across the district. So looking really forward to those additions and just the opportunity to even make those available through ESSER funding and again through the support of our board.
Yes, and the district in partnership with MindPeace and the mental health providers have done lots of very unique things and as Susan uses the term, mitigated strategies to really meet the needs of the students as well as the staff. And it hasn't been easy, folks. And as you all know, as we've gone through COVID, we've had different scenarios, different things happening or whatever. But it has always been a strong emphasis and a strong focus of the board and administration to make sure that our students are well and our staff as well too, because we cannot operate the schools unless our staff are healthy. And I just, I want to reiterate that if you have significant absences across the district, you have to close school buildings. And so we've worked really hard to achieve that.
Thank you. All right, we've got Damian and then Kendra, then Brian with questions. So Damian, go for it.
Right, so this is probably a follow-up, and I think it may be more for Susan from a policy or implementation standpoint to this whole idea around the mental health. I had the good fortune of speaking and learning from Kendra in our first meeting about trauma, right? And so my question is, from a policy standpoint, is trauma not only trauma-informed care, is that not only a part of, or will it be a part of professional development so that teachers are not only feeling healthy, but also aware of triggers and warnings and signs that will either positively or negatively impact how they engage students more broadly?
No, thank you for that question. So that's really important work for us. And so last year, exactly at this time, we had a full day of professional development for our school teams around trauma-informed care for our students. We've also since then, in conjunction with the psychiatrists and psychologists and social workers at Cincinnati Children's, in addition to our own staff, developed a trauma-informed training that was available virtually for all of our staff, and many of whom took part in that opportunity. We're going to offer it again because there was such huge interest in that. And it actually now it has been picked up and hopefully, fingers crossed, is being going to be supported by a national foundation here soon. So stay tuned for that news, but to be offered to other school districts. We recognize the huge importance of that work. And to Carolyn's point earlier, teachers make a profound impact on our students, and they need to be able to have the strategies and tools at their fingertips to be able to make that impact. So we believe in providing that professional development to them.
Thank you, Damian. Great question. Kendra, I think you're up next. Yep, Kendra.
So my original question was the one about the health centers in the school. And I know that there's been a huge focus on community. And so while there's been direct impact with the students that are receiving services, are the parents of these students, are they able to have access to these services as well, so that the overall structure of the household is more stable and healthier, so that it is directly benefiting the student success as well?
So love that question also. So the short answer is yes. The but is some of our folks who provide that and lead that work in terms of other agencies, most of them have stipulations within their overall operating structure that they do allow and encourage families and actually community members. During the time of COVID, we did ask our SBHCs, our student-based health centers, to have folks enter through external doors, because we had at that time not allowed visitors into our schools to reduce the spread of COVID. And many were able, and we worked with them with our facilities teams to allow those visitors into our SBHCs through external doors or through hallways where we had only visitors going in that arena. But yes, absolutely.
Thank you. And I just want to also point out that, Pam, if you'd like to jump in, you feel free to unmute yourself and jump in as well. I know you're driving, so it might be hard to unmute.
Actually,
but
Susan and Carolyn are doing a great job. I'm listening.
Okay.
But I will jump in if I need to.
Okay, great. All right, so we've got Brian next, then Mary and Unique have questions.
Agreed. So I kind of have two-part question, kind of going back, follow up. So with COVID kind of interrupting the strategic plan, I guess moving forward, when I guess the plans are made, I know nobody could see COVID happening per se and how to plan for that. But as you plan for future strategic plans, will the norm now be an element that allows you to sort of adapt to certain things like this? Will there be a learning perspective? I know, like, I work for the federal government, and we always have something called a coup plan. So a natural disaster, any kind of, they come up with random craziness to keep continuity of the plan moving. So that's part one. And then my second question is, along with the mental health piece, is, you know, sometimes things become hot topics, and it's the thing that we're pressing now. My question is, how do you make sure that this is sort of a pillar of everything? So regardless of who's in charge, that this thing never leaves the eyesight of the staff and people in charge. And then also that it's protected from, say, budget cuts or things like that, where funding, because this is, to me, this is very critical, I think, for the staff, for everybody. So.
Okay. I'll take a stab at that, and then I'm probably going to have to pop off. You are absolutely right. I think that this, if nothing else, COVID has taught us that we now have to really rely on how we better prepare and position ourselves to continue to do what we need to do while considering these other factors. So there's lots of things that have come into play, not only locally, but statewide and nationally. Safety standards and measurements and things like that, which of course have been included in our plans and will continue to be operationalized and changed and tweaked as we need to do that. So, that's just one example. When you talk about the hot topics, and you mentioned budget, and I'm going to say to you that that is all, the budget is always a moving target, as I call it, not only because we are required as an entity, a state government entity, to meet the budgetary requirements, but we do have to consider how hot topics, as you call them, or any kind of changes impact that. So oftentimes you're forced to relook your budget and realign things to make things work. And we oftentimes get criticized because people say we don't do a good job with the budget, but we actually do, considering the size of our district. We actually do a fantastic job in shifting and making sure that monies are allocated for the things that we need, not just for the moment, but as we move forward into the future. Say our safety protocols, for example, we have to have funding for that for the near future, because COVID is not gone anywhere. It just may shift gears a little bit.
Yeah, and I had heard, just to build on that question there too, I had heard Susan mention that the social workers are being paid out of the ESSER funds. Yes. And so I think that's part of Brian's question there too, of when the ESSER funds are gone, yes, is there a plan to making sure that those social workers can stay?
I will say that there's plenty of discussion around how we maintain those supports. I can't say for sure where the budget allocation is going to come from, what it would look like, what amount. I cannot say there won't be cuts. I'm saying that it is of such importance to the district and moving forward for the support of our students and staff that we have to look at that. So, and unfortunately, I'm going to need to dart off, and I know Pam's there to support the conversation, but I have about 20 minutes to get from this point to my next appointment. And I apologize for needing this late accommodation, but I really, anytime you all need me, Elisa or Nicole, or want to have a conversation, I'm happy to do that. So.
Well, we appreciate you, Carolyn, and we will see you again soon for our board meeting debrief. But let's all thank Carolyn, and then we'll continue with Susan and Pam. Thank you, Carolyn.
Thanks.
Elisa, can you hear me?
I can, yes, Pam.
Okay. Just to jump in a little bit for Brian's question also, I was in a training the other day, and the presenter said it so eloquently that COVID has made us realize that Bloom taxonomy has to be parallel with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That and as a board member and as a person who works in mental health and is very familiar with social emotional learning, over 20 years of understanding social emotional learning, that is a priority for me as a board member when Carolyn says we're going to have to really look at that and realign. We know that this is a need that's going to have to go on way longer than the next year. And so understanding how social emotional learning can impact learning, it is definitely something that we would take a very hard look at to try to prioritize, because it's needed.
And I would like to also just, thank you, Pam, for those comments. I just also would like to add that the district, with the support of the board, did add an actual department to our school district 2 years ago around positive school culture. And that is just an indication of how strongly I think that the school district and the board feels about social emotional learning and the mental health and of our students and the importance of the positive school cultures within each of our schools.
Thank you. All right, we've got questions from Mary and then Unique.
All right, I'm going to shift over a little bit to my question is going to be about community engagement. I know that I received in the mail a newsletter. I want to say it might be called something else, so excuse me if I don't have the exact right name, but I know in there.
CPS Connect.
Say it again. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Pam. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. The CPS Connect. And in there it states that Ms. Ahmad is going to be starting to have, I think it's tea time, coffee time. My question is, in regards to that, I know that there are more details coming. Are you able to answer now? Will it be flexible for parents in terms of the time frame, and will they be live recorded, or will they be recorded that parents can go back and see? I just want to know how equitable that will be for parents and families.
So I don't have all of the details yet, so I apologize for that. But I know that in the preliminary discussions, it was definitely that they would be held around the city, that there would be different times offered. I don't know for sure about the recording aspect of it. I do anticipate that some of them will be virtual. And so I think that I know that our communications folks are working really hard on making sure that everyone who wants to be able to participate can do so. That's a great question.
Thank you, Mary. How about Unique?
Yes, thank you. So kind of shifting gears back to policy and talking a little bit more about the strategic plan. So in terms of Cincinnati Public Schools being so large, like representing 52 neighborhoods, in terms of like carrying out the work, are there any tools or resources that the district uses to make sure that the goals and the policies and procedures that are put in place are actually being carried out by school administration and staff?
So I could talk about this all day. So Elisa, you can stop me.
Yes, you can. And it's good.
Yeah, so no, that's a really important question. And as a former school principal, it's just really important that the vision of the board is carried through each and every single one of us as staff members. So, and you're right, it is a challenge, but it's also an opportunity in a district that is the size of ours to be able to make sure that every single person hears that message. We know that adult learners need to hear something 7 times in order for it to be retained, and that's the average. So if some of us like me probably need to hear it 14 times. And so we've really started a drumbeat of communication so that after every single board meeting, there is an email that goes out to our full staff in terms of summarizing what happened at that board meeting with various policy decisions that may have an impact on folks. That's one of the first ways. We also have staff news that goes out every single Friday. We've learned during COVID the importance of the virtual message. So we have many updates by our superintendent and others who provide that sort of virtual platform for our school teams. And then with our school leaders, they're involved in meetings with us every single Thursday. And so they are hearing any up-to-date information. And also, we also learned during COVID the importance of having our directors in those meetings as well. So we have full leadership meetings on the Thursdays around various topics. And then Friday, we have our once a month, I apologize, on Thursdays, we have our full leadership complement who comes and we take a deeper dive into strategy to make sure that we are all on the same page. In terms of tools, Just briefly, we use something called the PGSM. It's priorities, goals, strategies, and measures that take a look at the vision that the board has set and then how we have aligned those goals and strategies to that vision, and then what those measures look like. We take a look at those metrics bi-weekly in our senior leadership meetings, and then have various folks who are responsible for meeting those goals provide real-time updates to us.
Thank you.
So overall, we review a lot of data, lots and lots of data, and the district reports lots and lots of data out to the board and to the families as often as they can. But the two-week cycle, Susan, I think that's going to be very, very instrumental in getting information out sooner for people. So, and I think that that's going to be very helpful for us measuring what things we need to change, what things are going well, and so on.
Agreed. Yes.
So there was a question, Susan, about the acronym PGSM, what that, yeah.
PGSM, yes. And so it's priorities, goals, strategies, and measures. Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. So I think there were a lot of questions, I think, around Speak Up, Speak Out, the new African American history curriculum. And so I'm just going to kind of try to combine some of these questions and ask, we see some of our surrounding suburban districts with these anti-CRT protests and their district administrators saying things like we're having to cut, diversity and equity work because of pressure from, some of their constituents. And so it was exciting here in CPS to see we're actually adding an African American history program, and the district passed an anti-racism policy last year. And so I think one of the questions is around how are you training teachers to be ready to teach some of these new courses that include history that many of us, including many of our teachers, were probably never taught, to make sure that they are prepared to teach this new curriculum with fidelity and with the kind of care that it needs.
So our curriculum department is really phenomenal about working with teachers, many of whom are actually the folks that go out and then provide professional development for their peers. And I think that, I know that we are incredibly fortunate in this area, that this is something that our district feels passionately about, and almost unanimously passionately about. It's something that should have happened a long time ago, quite honestly, and we are glad that we are able to do it now. So really looking forward to being able to have those additional course offerings. And I think, and I would be remiss not to say this, yes, we're offering those courses, but significant work has been done over the last few years of really looking at curricular adoptions to make sure that there's representation and that there are of all of our students within those works, and to do that deeper work behind in regard to our curricular offerings.
Thank you, Susan. And one of the questions about the Speak Up, Speak Out, I think maybe not everyone on the call might even know what that is. So maybe starting with what is it? And then there were some questions around, what efforts are in place to make sure that the students who are part of that trust it's a safe space for dialogue and for change, that there won't kind of be repercussions of some sort, if they say what they contribute to that space. And then what's the process for students who want to participate?
Yeah, so we are really, again, student voice is so important to us. And Lisa, you were involved in that work a couple of years ago, really to make sure that we were really paying attention to our students, and in a way that they didn't only have a voice, but that they had influence on decisions that we were making on their behalf. During COVID and during all of the social unrest, many of our students, and Josh Harden and Shauna Murphy are one of our assistant superintendents, Josh Harden is our athletic director, did absolutely a phenomenal job of really creating Speak Up, Speak Out, which was an opportunity for our students to be able to really express what was on their minds and their hearts, and not just express that, but to be able to offer solutions to district administration and to our board. And so that effort led to this thought that every school should be able to have that type of opportunity for their students. We had several years ago had collaboratives in various different ways across the district at each high school. So there was boys to men, girls to women, different kinds of collaboratives where students really came together and rallied around a specific cause and then created a campaign for that cause, and then emboldened their peers to be able to accomplish that within their schools. And so Speak Up, Speak Out now is going to become one of those collaboratives in each high school across the district. I think the way that we create that as a safe space for students is by paying careful attention to the advisors who are leading that work. But I will say this, that Speak Up, Speak Out has become part of the fabric of our district. We listen to the student voices very carefully. They are definitely advisors to us, and they're able to identify things much more quickly because they're in it, right? So it's their world. And so they are really they're huge influencers on our work.
And I would just like to add, from the board's perspective, we are the sample, I guess, that happened during the time with the George Floyd killing and the the social unrest and things like that were going on during the mid-summer of COVID. That opened up our eyes to understand that we do need to hear this feedback. We do need to give students a way to process all of this because we were not in school, and they needed a safe place to do it and to be encouraged, and not fear being penalized. Because I heard you, Elisa, say, how do they do that without fear of repercussions? The idea is that, we want to hear from them, and for us to keep a pulse on it, the Health and Safety Committee, I would like to see ongoing monthly topics of what things have been talked about, or ongoing feedback from the students as to what they're saying is going on in their schools too, as well as how to process things that are going on in their lives and in the surrounding community. So from the board's perspective, being able to get feedback and hear what's going on and how we're rectifying and meeting the needs of our students is going to be very helpful. So that's just something moving forward, ideally.
That's great, Pam, as a conduit between what the kids are saying and how the board can be informed and act on it. So I have one more question. I'm looking at the time. One more question from our Jam board, and then I have one wrap-up question for us. So one of them, obviously, the session this morning was all about partnerships. And so there were some questions on there about just like, how are partnerships even developed at CPS? And then how are they evaluated? Right. So I know, like, when we first started our community learning centers, it was kind of like anyone who came to the school, great, let's bring them in. And then a few years ago, there was a pruning process, right, where lots of principals were like, oh my God, I'm spending most of my life just managing all of these partnerships, and I'm not sure they're even all worth it. And so they were kind of pruning down which ones were really aligned with what the work at their school was. And so could you speak a little bit about how those partnerships are developed, and then how they're evaluated to make sure they're really doing what we need at the school?
So our partnerships are developed through our principals primarily, and it actually kind of depends on the partnership. So if it's with a mental health agency, Mindpeace really sits at the table with our local school decision-making committees and helps those teams make decisions about what would be the best fit. With other partners at the school, it's really with the instructional leadership team, the LSDMC, work in collaboration with the principal to determine the needs of the school, and then the partner who can help to fulfill those needs. It's very similar to how we talked about at the top of the meeting, the goal and then the actual outcome of that goal, but then what's the impact? And so, Elisa, you're exactly right. So principals really took a step back a few years ago and said, okay, ultimately our impact is around, we want it to be towards student achievement. So if that's our ultimate impact that we're trying to make. So if this partner can help us ladder to that impact by doing X, Y, Z, then that is someone that we definitely want sitting at the table right next to us in partnership. That said, then the way that we measure that is through a variety of means. Partners and principals and school teams work collaboratively to determine what those metrics may be. be. We are responsible as administration to report out to the board on an annual basis, contracts for our partners and progress toward those overall goals. That's not only done at the district level, but at the school level as well.
Thank you, Susan. And Pam, I know you're in transit, but you both have a board perspective and kind of your everyday work life perspective as a partner. And so I wasn't sure if you had anything to add too.
You are, I want to stop for here for a few seconds. You are right. As an agency perspective, our goal has always been to remove any barrier that that's hindering academic success. And so with that being said, when Susan had mentioned that measuring how that works in all schools, and if it's aligned with student success academically, then that's how you determine if the partnership is being effective. I don't think we actually have an actual tool that we use for all partnerships because everybody delivers something differently and it looks differently, but the common goal is the success of the students, socially, emotionally, and academically. So yes, this has been a road I've been on for several years. Lisa, you're right.
Oh, can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah, go for it, Marcia.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. So I was the one that asked that question. So thank you so much for answering that. So I just wanted to also kind of be clear with the partnership. So just to clarify, so the principals are the ones who identify the partnerships based on the need. Is that what I hear?
The principal determines the need, and I think there's a process of interviewing for partnerships, assessing, and then putting what we call, I guess, a RFP. Susan, do you guys use RFPs?
Yes.
Send out for requests for proposals, and then you do, well, the schools for mental health, they do what's called a needs assessment. And then once the school does a needs assessment, that goes out to several agencies who may be interested in being interviewed. And I think that process works the same with resource coordinators or any other partners. But there's a need assessment that's completed, and then you kind of do a process of interviewing to determine what's the best fit for that school. So the principal identifies the need, or based on maybe the LSDMC, based on feedback from teachers, or what have you.
Thank you. Great clarifying question, Marcia. Okay, so my kind of last question here, wrapping this up. The whole theme this morning was everyday people, right? And that everyday people can have a real impact on our kids' lives. And so we've got this Zoom room full of pretty exceptional everyday people, if you ask me. That's pretty amazing. And so they're all trying to figure out, what do I do to make an even bigger impact than what I'm doing right now for our kids? And so I'm just curious from each of your perspectives, Pam as a board member, Susan as a lead administrator in the district, are there things that you feel like you would say, this is what one of the needs is, this is how I think everyday people, from my perspective, could really help our kids in CPS?
Turn on my mic, okay.
Yeah, there you
go. Really, for me as a board member, community engagement is key, and I think that we have to do better as a board and as a district. I'm hoping that with COVID passing allows us to get out more and be more in tune with what the needs of the communities are with regarding to schools. But I think people connecting and being engaged with the school, I think that's the best perspective from me as a board member. And I think for us getting out more or being engaged more with what those issues or concerns are will help us see better progress.
I completely agree. And I think it's, we love to hear from people. And so if there are situations, if there are challenges, if there are opportunities, I think it is always, so I think it is always helpful to be able to have that voice present. And sometimes when people call, they apologize, and it's please stop apologizing, because we don't know how to help or to support sometimes unless we hear those voices. Or sometimes folks have these incredible ideas or ways in which they can engage a school community, or I think those are just amazing opportunities, and they feel like, back to the theme, they sometimes feel like everyday moments, but I don't don't want to imply that they're insignificant, because that voice is just incredibly important to us. And we really, really, really appreciate folks who are actively engaged in their communities and in their schools.
So basically, I would encourage people to stay in tune with all of our committee meetings, stay in tune with our board meetings, email us. I get lots of emails and I do respond to them directly to me, or sometimes our president responds to a general email sent to all of us. But reach out to us and so that we can know what some of those concerns are, or even positive feedback. We need to hear that too, so I can give kudos at the board meeting about something that's going on. I always like to give kudos, because I like for people to know that the things that we're doing is positive as well.
Thank you. That's great advice too. I mean, I think especially in a year where we saw, we used to joke when I was on the board, if you had like, if you hit double digits for the number of people who were tuned in on the live stream, we'd be like, woohoo. And our board president, Erica Copeland-Dansby, would be like, my mom watches every time, so we got to take one off of that, right? Like, that's just my mom. And then we saw this past year, there was like thousands of people tuning in, which is an amazing opportunity for the district to say, like, how do we keep those people engaged who might have been tuning in just because it was a huge thing, are my kids going to be back in school or virtual or what? But, how do we make sure that they stay engaged and realize there's lots of important decisions being made at every one of those meetings. So thank you, Pam, for raising, just come to these board meetings, committee meetings. Yep. And Susan, thank you for saying, give us a call, tell us your ideas, what's going wrong and what's going right. So thank you. So for our School Board School crew, we need you to hang out because we're going to do some reflection and logistics. But let's first make sure we say thank you to Susan and Pam for being so generous with their time and their knowledge. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
You.
Thanks for asking me. Have a good day.
Yes, thank you so much. Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. I love that too. From a school administrator's perspective, this is your Happy New Year moment. That's great. Okay, well, thank you all so much. I know this was a long time for us to be together, to watch this morning and then to have this conversation, but I hope that was really helpful to have some time with some of our district's leaders and really hear from them what is really their answers to your questions. And as I hope you can tell, they're all very transparent and they want to hear from you. And so we're going to do a couple of things before we jump off today. So the first thing is we always try to give some time for reflection. So Nicole and I know that people process in lots of different ways. Some people like to do that in big groups, some in partners, some in small groups, some on their own. So throughout School Board School, you'll see this time is used differently in different sessions. So today we're going to do some processing of everything we heard in small groups. So in just a minute, Nicole's going to put you into some small Zoom rooms. So accept those when it pops up, accept your small room. And in that time, we do just want you to process what you heard today. And, we know lots of people might have lots of stuff buzzing around in their heads. So we really want you to think about what themes did you hear rising to the top? What big questions surfaced for you? And Nicole just chatted that in. So sometimes when there's a lot going on in your brain, it's easier if you can try to start bucketing stuff when you're processing it. So that's why we're saying focus on the themes. Big themes you heard, big questions that surfaced. And so we're going to put you in rooms for about 10 minutes, and then we will come back together and hear what people talked about. Nicole, work your magic. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we've got everybody back.
You said you wanted to sneak into all of the conversations.
Yes, like we were saying, like when we were in person, you can kind of walk around and hear what people are talking about, but there's no like sly way for us to just like drop in for a minute, And so, yes. So to that end, we're curious. We'll take a couple of people from the groups, like any big things rise up in your debriefs, any themes that you heard, any big questions that you have, anything that you wanted to share with the full group. Kendra.
So one of the things that we, Marcia and I talked about was how do we hear or take theory and really put it into practice. So we know that we heard from the board members and there is a lot of things that they are focusing on as far as the initiatives that they are working to implement, but how does that really translate to all of the families where it's actually access. So yes, there are programs, there are interventions. However, are we connecting with all families so that they feel that their voices are heard? Are there, we've heard a lot about the disparities between our regular or our 2020 schools, 2020 vision schools versus our magnet schools or higher performing Montessori schools. And so knowing that there's a disparity within the communication within the district, that's just been the theme. So we hear that there are a lot of great things going on that we're all excited about, that the district is excited about, but making sure that everyone has access to that so that there aren't continuous gaps within the child's learning.
Thank you. Kendra, and you said Marche was we were talking about that with? Yes, I think that's so important. And when I heard them both talk about all the data they're collecting and sharing every couple of weeks, that got me excited. But I was wondering if any of you were going to say, how are you sharing it with the public? So, I mean, I think that is one of the things, if we wanted to follow up with them, to say, like, that's great, you're collecting all this data to know what is happening and to whom. Is there a way the public could know that too? Yep. Anyone else want to share part of the conversations you had in your group?
Yeah, just really quickly, Alex and Brother Abdeen and myself were in a conversation, and sort of a broad thematic theme was this idea of this collective impact notion with everyday people, that so many different people can be a part of whatever the solution is. It's not a new phenomenon. In fact, you would expect something like this at what ostensibly was sort of a pep rally, just to get people energized and sort of do some table setting for the year. I think what ultimately ended up coming out as questions is, from an objective standpoint, or from a subjective standpoint, it was really good to hear Tiane's approach, hear the voices of some of the partners and what the work is going to be. Objectively, we want to figure out what this is going to look like from an outcomes standpoint, not just outputs, right? And so how is this going to translate into student achievement and student attendance, particularly given some of the challenges with like buses and all these other issues that are sort of, in the fray at the beginning of a school year, in addition to, Delta variants and all these sort of uncontrolled variables. So, it was a really good, for what it was in fact a pep rally, right? And so it was really well done as a pep rally. I get the end result is how will everyday people help produce the outcomes that help students thrive? And then ultimately, how will we measure that, share that with the public, and have those data points inform how we have this sort of continuous quality improvement model?
That's great. Thank you, Damon. Yeah, and I even saw on the Jamboard, there was one of those questions too, where like it seemed, at the beginning, it was fun to do that quiz, right? Or if people participated, of how many partners are there, how many this, how many that, but those are just numbers, right? That is not an outcome. That's just an output. We wanted X number of partners, we got that many. But I think the question on the Jamboard was to what end, right? Like, so then what are they actually doing, and are they making the impact that we want? So what's the effect of all of those partners? Well, that's great. So I know we are going to take a couple of minutes to do some logistics in just a minute. So don't jump off yet, because we want to make sure next session's a big one. We want to make sure we go through the logistics for that. But we always try to save some time too for you all to have a quiet moment on your own to reflect. So we're going to take just about 5 minutes and ask you, you can open up your journal if you want. And there on page 20, there are some reflection questions there. Nicole will chat in the link to the soft copy of the reflection questions if you like to type instead of handwrite, or just free write what's on your mind right now. But we know as soon as we release you back to the busyness of your daily lives, it's going to be hard to think back on this morning. So we want to give you some time here. So we're going to take just 5 minutes. Again, take this time to just reflect quietly. We'll come back together in 5 minutes with some logistics. If you want to turn your camera off for this part, if that makes you feel more comfortable, feel free to do that. And we'll see you back in 5 minutes. All right. Okay. Well, again, we know 5 minutes is never enough time to get all your thoughts out, but we always just want to give you a little bit of a start. Of course, feel free to take as much time as you need after our sessions too, to keep thinking and reflecting on them. So we want to cover a couple logistics before we go. First is, for this session, we had asked you to email Phyllis Davis from the school board administration to get on the list for all of the school board agendas and meeting announcements. Phyllis emailed me over the weekend and was like, could you just send me the list instead of having 19 people individually email her? So I sent that list to her. Should have thought of that. So I sent the list to her. So if you didn't do that part of the pre-work, you skipped that part, we took care of it for you. This is Nicole and me being constant learners for every class from now on. We'll just send that list to Phyllis. So if you start getting emails from Phyllis Davis or Pat Bruckner, that's what that is, that they send out the meeting agendas and meeting notices for all board meetings. Okay, so let me share my screen here real quick for those people who need to see stuff, not just hear it. So our next session is a big one. This is one where if you ask our past school board school members, they'll say it is one of the most impactful sessions of kind of our whole 20 session series. So it's on Saturday, August 28th. It's all day from 9 to 5. We are planning for this to be in person. So just like our first session, please wear your mask. We will have masks there if you need one, but wear a mask. And then Nicole's booked a really cool space for us that is called the garage, because it's an old garage. So it has these huge garage doors that open. So while we'll be inside, there's lots of air moving. It's kind of like being outside. So we booked that to, have some sort of outside space to keep everyone as safe as we can. And so it will be in that space and wearing masks, that one coming up. We have 2 facilitators for this one coming in from out of town, David Weaver and Marion Hodges-Bigland. So many of you probably know David Weaver. He's kind of a legend in Cincinnati. He's been around for forever in Cincinnati, and a couple years ago moved away, but still comes back often to do work here. So we're really excited to have him, and he and Marion have done this session for us for the last few years together. So we look forward to this one. You will see there's quite a bit of pre-work for this session. That's why Nicole sent you the link to that pre-work folder last week in case you wanted to get started on it. But I really, really, really want to emphasize, if you haven't opened that yet, please do so as soon as possible, because all of that pre-work is really important. So can't emphasize enough that you have to do all of the pre-work for this session. It's one where really, if you don't do it, you'll just have nothing to give to your classmates during the session. And it's going to be hard for you to receive all of the just really great planning that David and Marion put into this session. So definitely check that out. There's one item of pre-work that's due this Friday. It is a really fun one. It's very quick, but we wanted to give you a heads up for it, where we ask you to let us know a song that represents why you do this work. And then Nicole makes us a playlist. I'm not gonna lie, as you probably all could tell already, Nicole is a pretty awesome DJ. She's got friends from class 3, just ask them. They gave her a DJ nickname last year. So you do not want to miss out on being on Nicole's playlist. So make sure you get that done by this Friday. So that is it for logistics for that session. If you have any questions when you check out the pre-work for that, just get in touch with Nicole or me. We are always here. We always want to help make sure that you have everything you need. So broken record here, make sure you do the pre-work. There are videos, there's activities, do all those things. So before moving away from your computer, also please do your survey. So you should have received it from Aaron Green. We apologize for the mix up last time. They were sending it 1 hour before the session ended. So we asked them from now on to send it 1 hour after the session starts, so we can make sure it's always in your inbox. If you don't have that, just chat Nicole and she'll send it your way. Nicole and I will hang out in this Zoom to just see if anyone has any questions, anything you want to chat about. Anytime we have virtual sessions, just know Nicole and I do that, so that if there is something you don't want to kind of talk about in front of everybody, but want to talk about with us, we'll always do that on these virtual sessions. That is everything, except for we do want to say to all of our CPS teachers, staff members, families, we are thinking of you. Good luck tomorrow. I have 2 CPS students of my own, twins, who are heading off to 7th grade. And for the first time, they're going to be in 2 separate schools. Ooh, the nerves around here are high, so we feel you. We are so grateful to all of our CPS staff. And yeah, good luck to you all and to the families. Again, do those surveys before you jump back into everything else going on in your life. And we just want to thank you. Thanks for a great session and all your engagement. And we'll hang out in case you need anything.